Though the Ministry have largely aligned with the Anarchs in these turbulent nights, Hesha Ruhadze stands like an old rock in a stream. When asked about sectarian allegiances, the Nubian archaeologist rolls his eyes and mutters to himself. He spurns politics, referring to it as a waste of focus for creatures that might live for an eternity. His dedication is to history, the mysteries of vampire origins, and importantly, discerning their fates. All the while he sits in at Anarch moots and listens attentively. Hesha is a willing servant of the blood, and believes he can understand the voice of Sutek, calling from his vitae. Where this might be a mark of insanity for some vampires, Hesha's standing among kindred far and wide lends credence to his claims. He is still the same coolly charming man, and every word he speaks feels heavy with gravitas. But now he speaks the herald of his god's will. Every time he does so, it is with a smile. Greetings, Kindred. I am Voivode Maquette, and welcome back to Our World of Darkness and another episode of Metaplot Monday. This is actually the 50th episode of Metaplot Monday, and it's exciting for me that we've done this that many times. We've hit the halfway mark to 100, and that's nuts. So I'm sure you've noticed by the introduction and also by the name of this video that today we're going to handle the Loresheet of Hesha Ruhadze. And please, by all means, correct me on my pronunciation. Ruhadze, I'm pretty sure, is wrong. But that is how I've always pronounced it, and I'm sure some of you out there who have more worldly languages than just me, who is monolingual, could correct me and fix this travesty of a language barrier. But tonight, I've decided to do this instead of continuing along the work of the Forbidden Religions book, because a community member spoke up and told me that they had been specifically waiting for this one, and whereas they were excited about hearing the new lore sheets and the new stuff, it was still kind of disappointing that they'd been waiting all this time and now would have to wait even longer. And it is not my World of Darkness, except for when we do the Thicker Than Water recaps. It's our World of Darkness, and I want to do what you guys want, because you got me where I am right now. I'm still growing, but like, I love you. You're doing a great job, and I appreciate you. So I want to do things that you guys want, and this is a request. So if any of you guys have any specific lore sheets that you want me to get to before I would typically get to them, go ahead and ask, and I will handle it in order of request. And I do look forward to basically doing what you guys ask when it comes to that kind of thing. So let us get in on this. So who is Hesha? Hesha is ancient. Hesha has been around for a very, very long time. He is he's, from what last time I checked, he's an 8th generation follower of Set. And he's just, the first time I ever heard of him was in the Fall of Atlanta books, like always, the clan novels, the Modern Night clan novels. And a lot of the NPCs or SPCs from the old White Wolf World of Darkness books comes to me from reading those books. Those really were the catalyst on me getting interested in the Metaplot and how the stories work and come together. And Hesha finds a way to weasel himself into all of that. He's not in it for fame or glory. He's in it for knowledge and power. And it's such a very interesting way to see a vampire, especially one who doesn't ascribe to the whole Cain mythos. You know, he believes that Set was the first vampire, and he believes that other kindred are the cousins of the followers of Set, but they may not even be the same species, really, that they could be people who survive a similar curse, but may not be the actual same curse that Set put upon, or may not be the same gifts that Set put upon his followers. So, jumping right into the lore sheet, let's go ahead and see what this one has to give the players who choose to take it. Investing one trait gets you one of Hesha's works. You own one of Hesha's treatises on the history of kindred existence. While the work may be controversial and oppose the traditional Cainite mythology, it conveys one additional die on occult-based dice pools, or pools relating to vampire origins. This work may be sold in exchange for 1 dot of the resource background. This is actually pretty neat because I like the fact that it not only covers giving you a die when it comes to occult in general, but also when it comes to vampire origins. And that's really neat because regardless of what the actual history is of the kindred existence and where they came from and how it works, because you know the Cain and Abel story is effectively canon in this this world that we enjoy to read so much. If you look at any of the Time of Judgment books, that they heavily refer to on Cain coming back. So like it's so neat that they're actually giving credence to other mythologies when it comes to this sort of thing, and that's really nice to see. Leaving the Cain and Abel story, the history of vampiric existence, as a little bit more obscured by the passage of time. And I think that's important for a vampire game. The fact that you can actually trade one of these off for a single dot of resources is kind of funny. I think they would be worth a little bit more than that. But the book ruling saying saying that it's a 1 point of resources background is kind of, that's humorous to me. Investing 2 traits into this lore sheet gets you something Hesha wants. You know what Hesha currently seeks and can access it, or already own it. The item can be used to bargain with, blackmail, or even threaten Hesha, or even present to him as a gift for a future favor. This artifact or piece of information conveys an additional 3 dice to persuasion or intimidation pools involving Hesha or his cult. It can also be sold, adding 3 dots to your resources, up to 5, for the duration of the story. So, this is a very interesting one. I like the idea of having something that Hesha wants, and it really opens up the thought of, what is it? Like, what exactly do you have that Hesha wants so bad? And this is something that I think as a storyteller, if one of my players came up and said, hey, I want this lore sheet, I want something that Hesha wants, I think I would make it some obscure, like, Ark and the Covenant in the crate style box kind of thing, where, like, you shouldn't open it. You've been completely warned by whoever you got it from that you should never open this thing. Basically just make it a MacGuffin, because that's what you're doing when you take this, is you're adding a MacGuffin to game. You're adding an item of significant value that somebody wants to your character sheet. And if you've seen movies such as like Pulp Fiction or something like that, you understand exactly what this is. This is the briefcase. This is something that it doesn't really matter what it is, just Hesha wants it. Investing 3 traits into this lore sheet gets you Museum of the Faithful. You possess the rare privilege of membership in one of the Ministry's museums of vampire history. These underground treasure troves are securely guarded, but contain a plethora of accessible information about legendary Cainites. You must submit a new treasure to the museum every year for continued membership, and will have your access denied if you fail to do so or ever steal from one of these Setite hordes. You gain 3 additional dice to all tests involving the research of vampires and vampire history for as long as you keep your membership. This has a massive catch-22, because first off, it's great to have access to that kind of thing, and for 3 points I find that incredibly worth it, especially for gaining additional 3 dice involving any kind of research into vampires and vampire history. But the fact is, you need to present a new treasure to this trove every year to continue access, which doesn't sound like much, except for the fact that you've got to give them something that impresses them. You have to give them interviews with elders. You have to get them artifacts taken from historical sites, things like that. These are going to be, you're dedicating your character a large chunk of the time to find these things, and since you're doing that, you're effectively dedicating your game to playing treasure hunter for a good chunk of it, unless your storyteller just wants you to have access to this thing. I think I would actually rather take the Carmelita Nelson libraries than take this. I think it's neat, and if you're interested in playing that sort of game, yes, you could possibly do it. Your storyteller does need to understand at that point, though, that this is what you were trying to get, and should offer those kind of things into your story, such as auctions with rare items, such as the auction for the urn in Sticks and Bones and things like that. That does seem like it would have to be a given pool when it comes to working with your storyteller. Investing 4 traits into this lore sheet gets you Blood Cult. Hesha has taught you the old ways of the followers of Set, in which mortals and ghouls perform more than a servile role. Your cult encompasses a warrior, a priest, and a scholar, as well as willing vessels from which you feed. 3 background dots can be split between these specialized cultists, who can count as herd or retainers. They possess more knowledge and ability of your kind than typical servants and ghouls, giving them an additional die in all interactions with vampires. So this one right here is kind of interesting. It's actually for ministry characters only. This is something where if you're this is you playing a Setite, straight out original follower of Set character, where you now have 3 background traits to split up between building your cult's infrastructure. And that is a very important thing to have if you're actually going to pull this thing off. Now, before we knew that you could only take 1 lore sheet, this was one of the lore sheets that Dawn was interested in taking for Thicker Than Water. I think we actually settled on her only taking 1 point per lore sheet when we first built her characters. It's been completely changed now. We ended up doing a complete audit on character sheets and switching things around when we switched over to playing the Thicker Than Water from the Sun City Chronicles. But I do believe Blood Cult and also Hear the Blood Sing were something that Dawn really, really wanted. It made a lot of sense to her character to have these things. But you really can't throw that many points into lore sheets. You're really only supposed to get 1 of these. But Blood Cult is really one of those things that does bring back what the Setites used to be. Now, not how players used to play them, or at least in my experience, because everybody always played them as like greasy drug dealers in my games, and it was really sad because I really enjoyed seeing them portrayed as the religious leaders that they should have been portrayed as. Setites never wanted to see people fail or fall to vice. Setites presented that vice to see who could rise above it. And I have a lot of respect for Clan Set, and I do enjoy what they became with 5th edition, introducing the ministry and becoming religious leaders within the Anarch community. But, and just hear me out on this one, I do like the fact that V5 does give you the ability to carry on Follower of Set legacy as it was in the past. Now, a warrior, a priest, and a scholar are going to be your foundations for pretty much anything when it comes to having a cult put together in the eyes of the followers of Set. The warrior is going to be somebody who protects your temple and then also performs violent acts that you may need taken care of, because these are vampires. And regardless of whether they're talking about politics or religion, there's going to be some need for that sort of thing. The priest is going to be somebody who can run your cult for you as you act as the living god, the living embodiment, the avatar of Set himself in that fashion. And the scholar is going to be the person who keeps the names, the person who keeps the events. And these are all vastly, vastly important. And the fact that they're only really considered herd or retainer really does, it's a simplified view, and it's correct, but it really is a simplified view. And yeah, it's, I don't know, I really love this lore sheet. And I'd like to see people take this, but I think you really do need to have more of a follower of Set focused game when it comes to that, which I'm sure some of our community members would love. Investing 5 traits gets you Hear the Blood Sing. Maybe Hesha taught you how to hear the words, or perhaps you accomplished this feat yourself. You hear the voice of Sutek more loudly than you do your beast. Through riddles, visions, and musical refrain, the storyteller will occasionally offer you guidance from the godlike voice issued from your vitae. Once per session, you are able to automatically resist frenzy, treating it as a ministry compulsion instead. So taking that lore sheet point makes it so that you can hear the voice of Set in your blood, the same as Hesha claims he can do. Now, again, this is something Dawn considered taking, but what we ended up doing was figuring that it would be more fun for her to believe that the voice of the beast was, in fact, the voice of Set. So she believes that she heard the voices of the gods before her embrace ever even occurred, and then when she became embraced, the voice of the beast just kind of took advantage of that. Now, since her whole interesting foray with the blood of Zapathasura from the Week of Nightmares lore sheet, she now believes that listening to Zapathasura, or at least she was at one point believing that Zapathasura was the voice that she was hearing, and he was controlling which way that she should be going for his own needs. So it's really funny when you've planned out a character to think that they have a point in the lore sheet. I don't know if that makes any sense, but the fact that you can resist frenzy once per session, I think that was it, yes, once per session, yes, and treat it as a ministry compulsion, which is transgression, if you don't know what that is. The ministry compulsion says, Set teaches that everyone's mind and spirit are bound by invisible chains of their own making, their blood chafing at these binds. The ministry suffers a burning need to break them. The vampire receives a 2 dice penalty to all dice pools not relating to enticing someone, including themselves, to break a chronicle tenet or personal conviction, causing at least 1 stain in ending this compulsion. So instead of frenzying, you need to convince someone, yourself included, that it's a good idea to do something that's going to give you a stain. So that is very Setite. That is very Setite. Like I said, they do seem to be like that, but their reasoning for doing it is to see who will rise above the ashes. And like I said with Blood Cult, this one is also a ministry specific lore sheet point. So this is actually the only one that we've seen so far out of all the lore sheets that we've done where only individual points are clan specific. And that's pretty neat. So depending on what you guys plan on doing with that, I want to know if there are any Setite characters, if there are any Ministry characters who have accomplished anything with this lore sheet, who have used it to build up a cult, who have used it to be in Hesha's favor for one way or another. And I don't know. I think this one is a lot of fun. I think Hesha is just a character. Hesha's a character that's always going to show up in my games. That is just for sure. He's always showed up as a background. He's a character that city hops. He goes from place to place. So he's one of those characters that may be in town and is always fun to take advantage of for players. So this lore sheet was to say thank you for being a community member. And like I said, if anybody has anything else that they would like me to cover beforehand, I will take those in consideration by order of appearance, I guess. And if I don't hear anything, we'll be getting right back into the Forbidden Religions book. I am Voivode Maquette. This is Our World of Darkness, and this has been an in-depth look at Hesha in our Metaplot Mondays. Please, by all means, please fix my pronunciation of this man's last name too. He deserves to be pronounced. He deserves to be pronounced properly anyway. Thank you for joining us. Good evening.